Welcome to the island of Sint Marteen. Paradise for some, but today I'm here on a mission. The Lotus Esprit, as it's known, has broken down again, and I've been called up to fix it. I'm here for 7 days and have a lot to tackle, racing against time and island logistics. Let's see what it takes to fix a 90s supercar out in the middle of the ocean. This could get interesting. So in a couple days, I'm going to be hopping on a plane flying 2,500 miles or so out to an island in the middle of the ocean to fix a Lotus Esprit. And this is the extent of room I have to pack everything I need to get this car done. This is a remote, tiny island, and they have basically nothing as far as tools or parts or anything, so everything I could ever encounter on the car has to fit in there. Well, it took forever to get everything packed up, and this thing is absurdly heavy, but I wanted to get a quick measurement of it. Oh. $76 in this tiny little suitcase. Oh, that's gonna be a pain in the ass to lug around, but I had to make sure to get everything I could potentially think of inside this. Praying to God I didn't miss anything. So a few years ago, I was introduced to the owner of this Esprit. It was previously owned by one of my good friends from Tim's Enthusiast Garage, and then sold to the Triple F collection before it ended up in Sint Marteen. I was informed that it needed a timing belt, and having done so many, I gladly flew down there and took care of the job. Now, a few years later, and the Esprit is in need again. The roads down here in Sint Marteen are rough, to say it lightly.
It's insane. No. Oh no.
There's the lake.
Oh no.
This is
Didn't Mike say getting up this with water on the ground is like really difficult?
Yeah.
Oh, super. Let's hope John can do it. Come on, John. We're rooting for you.
Oh, we're good.
Famous last words. Everyone.
The island is small, and while there are some nice roads, you really have to go through some rough terrain to get to them. I'm sure there are plenty of people who would say owning a car like this down here is just crazy. But if you have the car bug, there's no leaving it behind when you move down here. I love that this car is driven regularly even in these conditions, so I'm dedicated to keeping it in tip-top shape for him to enjoy. This time around, our main goal is going to be overhauling the suspension as well as fixing a bad misfire on the car. I was sent a couple videos of how bad the play was in the front, but apart from that, I can only guess what the issue is. I'll have to plan ahead for any possible fault that could cause this, as I won't even know until I get down there and get my hands on it. And slightly less of a concern to me, here's what the misfire sounds like. Thankfully, the owner was generous enough to put us up in this absolutely gorgeous house while I work on his car. But before we get to that, let's just take a second and see what this island has to offer. Alright, day one of working on the car, and somehow I managed to catch the flu, so this is going to be really interesting for me. And right out of the gate, you can tell exactly what's going on here. It looks like pretty much every single poly bushing on this entire car's suspension is shot. Which is crazy, because the Triple F guys had this entire suspension overhauled like no more than 4 or 5 years ago. This poly just must not do well in this heat and salt environment. That's crazy. Somehow, these are actually moving. Like, I just got this nut off on this side. On my car, I had to cut a little notch out of here because this bolt was completely seized. The thing that shocks me is my car's always been in a good environment, and this one's right by the sea, and there's surface rust everywhere, so I was really shocked that this came loose, and honestly, just extremely happy, because that would have made this job a lot more difficult. But we have these completely loose, and then down here, this bushing, there's supposed to be a bushing in there, and there's literally nothing. So the roads have just kind of beat up on the suspension, but we're going to get it replaced and replaced right so he can enjoy his car. I managed to get this front upper arm off pretty easily, but I just can't believe how poorly this poly is held up. I just have to kind of beat this rod forward a little bit so I can slip this back one out now. Look at this. I've never seen poly this bad. We're putting OEM back in the car for sure. I brought my parents along with me, so I'm putting my dad to work as collateral over here. No bushing. So we got the front suspension apart pretty late last night, so I figured I'd just bring it back and work on these by the sea, because why wouldn't you? But up here you'll notice the front bushing is literally just completely missing. This one for the sway bar is alright, and then the reason this is happening is this poly is just, I don't know what kind of material it's turned into, but it's like able to be picked away by like a fingernail. I've never seen it happen like this. Poly's usually like very, very durable. It was getting a little toasty out there by the pool, so I had to come in to finish off these control arms, and I searched all over the entire island for this piece. I brought my ball joint press along, and it just didn't have the right size fitting, but this one conveniently fits right over the ball joint and on the inner control arm bushing. But it is having trouble clearing, so I'm going to just have to cut it down, and then I don't know what I'm going to do with this guy over here. So here are my new ball joints over here. These are off of a 90s truck, believe it or not. That's Lotus for you. And then here are the inner control arm bushings. You'll see they're quite a bit different than these ones, but they're going to do a lot better of a job. These are the sway bar bushings, and then what I've figured out over here is they actually sent the wrong piece for this front one. So I have these over here that were meant for the rear, and they're the right size. They're just slightly too big, so I'm going to have to kind of shave them down a little bit, and then those will work just fine. Same material and everything. I'm embarrassed to say this took me hours to figure out. So the socket wouldn't fit over top of the ball joint and still actually fit inside the ball joint press at the same time. And there's no way to get other tools around here. You just have what you brought. So I'm going to chop this down to kind of shorten it as the receiver for the ball joint. Had to make an emergency trip to the store for an angle grinder, but it's going to work. And there's how it all fits in there. Well, that took me longer than any other ball joint I've ever done, but that's kind of what I expected to happen out here. And now I'm onto this, and it is completely seized inside there. And yet another trip to Ace Hardware, I found a kind of pipe threaded thing to use as a receiver for this. And now after some heat and a bunch of just force, this thing is finally moving. I'm sweating my ass off out here. This is hard work doing it this old manual way with no presses or anything. The upper control arm is comparatively insanely easy compared to that lower. This is the cakewalk. Here's the finished product. They look a little old and ratty, but this car is going to drive probably better than it ever has. All these new bushings, new ball joints, it's going to be nice and tight compared to what it was just a couple days ago. I'm excited for him to be able to drive it again. Time for my 5th Ace trip of the day, I think. Ready to see this thing fly? This is foot to the floor. Right now, foot is on the metal. Foot still to the floor. There we we go, downshift. Alright, we're doing 42 kilometers an hour. Pretty sick. We are back at the car, and I had to shave this bushing down a little bit to be able to fit in there. I don't know what it is, but nobody can ever get these correct. And the countless that I've done, none have ever fit. These actually look pretty good, but I have new ones, so why not just throw them on? Tie rod will come later. If you look over here, here's our new lower ball joint, but then the upper ball joint is just mangled. So these sit on the dual upper control arms right here. So I have to take that off, and then we'll pop the new one in. Given this sway bar kind of just slides in, we've got to jack this up a little bit. It's got a lot of force on it. Luckily, these uppers just slid right out. I've got a couple shims that we have to put on to get the alignment right on these upper control arms right here. Getting pretty close to having this side at least done now. All these are on lower control arms completely dialed in. Just have to do the uppers with the shims. And that should pretty much do it over here. I had to go to ace yet again for another bolt on the bottom. And then this upper one, it actually went in pretty smooth. And if you remember just how bad the play was when I first got this up part, check it now. There's absolutely nothing. Looks good. I think we're getting pretty close.
So you got big.
Here's how the shims work. If you notice, both of these aren't even, like they're not centered onto the actual shock. So these kind of help you adjust forward to back, and then they're usually, like on both sides, they're pretty similar. There was 5 shims on each. Got our new ball joints in here. Spring mounts, or spring bushings up here. Both these guys in there. We have new lower ball joint. There we go. Good view there. Sway bar links. This bushing was completely gone, so we are all good to go. No movement whatsoever. There is quite a lot of play in this thing. This is what's left of the front bushings. Not a whole lot. If you've watched any of my previous Esprit videos, you'll notice that this is the easiest way to get access to everything. It's really crammed in there, so it's time to tackle that misfire though. Get a nice peaceful working environment here, listening to my baseball team get absolutely destroyed as usual. So getting these intakes off is notoriously very hard to do, but given I've done it probably realistically 25 times, I've got it down to a science. We're going to do these plugs and wires over here first, and then after that I'm going to start moving over to the injectors. There's 10 injectors on this car, but we have 2 rails right here and here with the main 8, and then down there is the coil pack completely buried. Given that these are a part sharing car, I want you to take a wild guess in the comments as to what these injectors are off of. It is nothing that you would even remotely associate with one of these cars. And you can't really get a socket extension down in here because the airbox is in the way, so I have to kind of use a 2-piece and feed it in like this. But in the end, it's really not that difficult to do. Pulling it back out is the actual hard part. These wells are pretty notorious for filling up with water and getting the car to misfire, but I honestly never really noticed these tiny, tiny little drain holes right here. I guess it makes sense, given the engine vents are literally directly above this. And lucky me, I caught the flu, I'm assuming on the plane, so I'm going to pack it up for the night. I'm really feeling it. But yeah, fever of 102 in a 110 degree garage is not fun. I brought 2 extra injectors just in case any of his were not functional, but the rest of them we're just going to go ahead and clean with the old school valve stem seal brake cleaner and tapping it to a battery method. A little sketchy, but it works every time. I brought extra bucket filters and all the seals, so it's been nice rebuilding these just looking over the ocean. I can't complain. Got the spark plug wells all sealed up. You have to put silicone up by the wires. It's kind of a pain. Alright, we have 4 bolts on and nothing else connected but the fuel lines, but I turn the ignition on and we don't see any leakage or smell anything, so that means we're in a good spot to continue putting this in. Just as usual, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. The car is running worse now and I don't see any leaks, so what I'm kind of thinking is maybe one of those injectors is stuck open or something like that. I'm going to have to do a couple other things to figure that out. I got under the car to inspect, and what I thought was a compounded issue of oil dripping out of the back of the turbo ended up just being extra fuel kind of draining out. So I know one of these injectors is probably stuck open and just dumping fuel into the cylinders. And given I don't want to hydrolock a very expensive engine, I pulled all the spark plugs out, and the last cylinder that I ended up checking had a bunch of fuel in it. So I'm going to keep these plugs out, bump the starter a couple times, shoot all that fuel out, pull all the injectors, and we're going to run through them once again to figure out which one's the issue. So I ended up thinking it could be potentially a wire, and these all share a common positive, and they use the ground to fire each injector. And up on the top side, I actually found a completely frayed wire, but it was for the power rather than the ground. So I'm thinking that has nothing to do with it because it would have affected more than one injector, so I'm just going to replace that and move on. Well, I feel them clicking, so they're firing. Okay, I think that was good. Let's give it another try. I have repaired that wire, and now on to the next thing. So, still no fix, so I'm going to end up pulling all these injectors, and I'm going to check the fuel pump over here while I'm at it. And the relays. Well, that would be the issue, wouldn't it? Just putting brake cleaner through this, no power from the battery or anything, and it is just completely open. So, I am going to put one of the ones I brought along with and see what it does. Hey, that sounds a lot better. It was this little bastard right here causing me all that headache. Much more than what you saw. And with that, I've got everything all wrapped back up. I did an oil change and checked a couple other things out, but the car looks fantastic and now it should drive great. I'm stoked with how it came out, and I'm really excited to hear his feedback on how he is liking the new car that he can actually drive now. And with that, my time on this beautiful island is wrapping up. Of course, I start feeling better the day before about to leave, but I still got some fun activities in. I can't say that I don't hope this will break down again, but I hope he at least gets a couple years out of this before I have to come down and do something else for him, because I really love it down here. So thank you to him, and make sure to follow along, hit subscribe if you haven't, because I have a lot more fun videos like this coming out in the future.